Rarely do I see people spotlight a huge F-bomb on their bio. The F-bomb being, I'll call it a failure, even though it doesn't sound like it turned out to be a failure. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. You got fired from Google. What happened?
Yeah, I definitely got fired, and it's something that I didn't tell anybody for a while. I didn't tell anybody for a long time, and it wasn't until probably 2, maybe 3 years later. It was something I hid actually from a lot of friends. Only my close family really knew,
Hmm.
but it's something that happened and was detrimental at the time. So I was at Google. I went to Penn State. I've been an entrepreneur for 10, 11 years now. I got an entrepreneurship at Penn State and got recruited by Google just due to my accolades and skill set. And I came on to their Google Ads program as a consultant. And I was there for about a year and a half. And at the same time, I was running my own company. I'd started another phone repair thing, just sort of part time. I sold a phone repair company when I graduated from school. And then I got kind of bored with the 9 to 5 at Google. So I started one on the side. And I was like taking phone calls and emails and like kind of scaling that business during the 9 to 5. And I got told to chill out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. So then I hired people to kind of run the day to day for that. And I also was part of a startup at the time. It's like a technology, like watch startup that was eating up some of my time too. And then, I started talking with a lot of the small businesses who were running ads with Google and using me as their consultant with Google. And a lot of them were having problems unrelated to Google Ads. They're having issues with their website, social media, search engine optimization. And I started referring them to a friend I knew who I was kind of training on how to do this stuff. And we started kind of working with them freelance on the side. And that just kind of blossomed into him and I, both being entrepreneurs. Let's start our own agency. And I got caught on a recorded line with a client, sort of mentioning how we can help him with some other stuff. And, that went up the food chain. I got brought in, got a voice recording. Yep, that's me. Pretty much got fired on the spot. I ultimately felt like I was doing the right thing by helping businesses with things that they needed that weren't relying on them spending money with Google. But I guess that goes against what I was hired for, which is to get them to spend more money with Google. So that's what happened. And I got fired and I was devastated at the time. I remember walking home. It was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it was negative 18 degrees out. And there was about a foot of snow on the ground. And I remember just calling my mom, just crying over the phone, just being so upset, not knowing what I was going to do next. And that's essentially what happened. And then, I can talk through what happened from there and how I got through it.
Wow, yeah. So, sometimes what looks like a door closing really turns out to be multiple doors opening. It really just depends on the perspective that the person chooses to embrace, right?
Exactly. And I thought of it as a failure at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I should have handled the situation differently, even though I thought I was doing the right thing. But ultimately, life is going to lead you, if you allow it, to where you need to go. And that's essentially what happened with me. Like, I was never meant to even have that job because I was an entrepreneur and I applied at other places that weren't as notable as Google, and I didn't get hired. And some of them gave me the feedback. They said, we're not so sure of you being a good security fit long term based on like your entrepreneurial endeavors. You seem like you have a lot going on. But then Google, I really prepped for all those interviews and, all the ridiculous questions they answer in the interviews and got the job. But ultimately, that's not where I was supposed to be. But in turn, it really did allow me to understand small businesses a lot more and learn more about Google Ads and SEO and really how just Google works in and out, which is what I use in my business today with Momentum is, utilizing those skill sets and expertise and, tangible information to help other small businesses grow.
Yeah. So let's talk about the recovery because you get terminated, you're walking through a foot of snow and 18 below, which really sounds like a story you can tell your kids one day. You think it's hard? Wait till you hear how I got home from work.
That's right.
But you're at this choice point, right? Do I become a victim of the circumstances I created and wallow in my pity? Or do I move from it and just thrive and step into what it is I'm supposed to do. So how did you recover from this?
The first immediate things I did was I lived in a house. It was basically a frat house with a bunch of Google guys where we all got along, and we're like 3 blocks from the office. And I was like, somebody go to bat for me. Like, somebody have my back here. Like, get me the job back, thinking like, I still deserve this. I still want this. I've got nothing else to do. I'm stuck in Michigan. I've got nobody out here. And, they didn't necessarily want to put their reputation on the line. And, maybe it wasn't the right call for that to happen anyways. But what's funny is when I was at Google, I started a phone repair company where I was taking the skills I was learning day to day about Google and applying that to the phone business, where within a couple months, I got my website and my Google listing ranked at the top of Google. So my phone was blowing up, like phone calls, emails, contact forms all throughout the day. So I had to hire somebody to like take those calls and messages. And I would meet people in my lunch break too, to pick up their devices, drop off their devices. And it just so happened, like a week before I got fired, I don't tell this story a ton, but this guy drops off his iPad, and he's a local business owner, owns like a finance company in that area. And he was like, "Oh, you work at Google? That's so cool. Like, I'm having an issue with my website. Nobody can find it on Google when they search my name." And I was like, "Oh, that's weird. Like, let me look into it and I'll get back to you." And, after I got fired, I was like, I really need to approach this guy. Like, maybe this is my first big opportunity to land like a solid client on my own, just through my own book of business and networking. And it turns out I came up with this whole presentation, this whole pitch, didn't know how to price my services or my, value my time. But I was like, all right, within 3 months for $5,000, I'll get you all over the top of Google. I'll fix your website and do all these different things. And it's funny. It's like having a deadline where it's kind of make or break for you. You're like, I need that money.
Yeah.
And I've got to do whatever it takes to figure out, how to get his website to rank. So I learned more about Google and SEO from the organic, like search engine optimization side in those 3 months than I have the rest of my 10 years combined. It was literally the biggest crash course, watching videos, reading blogs, reading books, getting on forums, trial and error, all these different things. And with 3 months, I got him ranked all over the first page of Google. He was getting a ton of traffic, and I worked with him for the next 3 years after that, and he was a reliable client.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, I want to go back to something you said at the very beginning. You went to your frat house and tried to rally all the guys to help be the voice to get you back in. When something goes wrong, when we get pushed outside of our comfort zone, our neurology seeks what we're accustomed to, our comfort zone, our gray area. So it does everything it can to go back to it. When reality is success, change only happens when you're outside of your comfort zone, and something really good has to happen to get you out of there, or something really bad has to happen. And people get stuck in trying to get back to their normal when their normal doesn't exist anymore. And you really embraced, with blind faith, stepping into realizing who you really were and were supposed to be, and albeit maybe out of a little desperation.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, you came up with an alternative way to redefine yourself. And that's what happens with success. And so many people miss those opportunities because they refuse to allow themselves the flexibility to do it.
The term liberation comes to mind for me because whenever it happened, within the next 2 weeks, I had the little phone startup thing I was doing. I was part of the watch startup, technology company. I just got fired from Google, and I was trying to get into like marketing consulting all at the same time. So I had options, but I didn't have anything firm, to stand on. And right at that same time, the co-founders in the watch company, I'd taken a step back because I didn't like where the company was headed in terms of like the vision.
Mm-hmm.
And plus I was told at Google, like, hey, kind of lay low with that stuff, focus on your job.
Mm-hmm.
And so right after I got fired, the guys didn't even know yet, but they forcefully bought out my equity, and it got ugly. We got lawyers involved, and like they bought out my equity in the company, which gave me a little bit of cash, but I was still upset because that's actually what I was going to start leaning on more than anything, because I had been with that startup for the previous 2 years. And I was like, all right, so out goes Google, out goes this startup. So now I have, this marketing company that I could try to create, this consultancy. Plus I've got the phone thing, which is kind of like reliable cash right now. But then also at that same time, my mom contacts me, and, she had already known about the situation. She was like, I hate to hit you with more bad news, but I need, to get this off my chest. She had just come down with breast cancer and was already going through treatments, and was like hiding that from me for like the first month or so, just because she knew I was in a bad place. But she liberated me by saying, don't worry about me. Like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to get through this. You focus on you, because I believe in you. I know who you are as a person, and you've got what it takes to succeed. So whatever you think is best, like, just focus on what you want to do to make you happy.
She gave you a heck of a gift. She really did.